first, a short introduction. I am working as a consultant since 4 years now at a company named QAdvis. It's a Swedish company. We are consultants, senior consultants within quality assurance, and we provide lots of services within the quality assurance area. Everything from QA, RA, and clinical consulting. We are helping bigger companies as well with the system development, software validation, computer system validation, risk management, product and process validation. We have training courses within our areas of expertise. We are also having authorized representation in Europe and the UKRP Association. So I will keep it short. If you're interested, you can look at our services on the webpage. And very shortly about me, I have over 20 years of experience from development and manufacture of medical devices. I've been working with the research, but also with product development, quality assurance, and so on. So basically everything within medical devices. I also have extensive experience from risk management for medical devices, and I'm working as a member of the standardization committee ISO IEC TC 210, the joint working group 1, which is working with the ISO 14971 and the associated report 24971 is the risk management standard for medical devices. And I've been working with the latest revision of the standard. So I will try to share with you some of my experience within the area. So let's get started. I will just start now looking at the risk management process to see where in the risk management process are we supposed to do any benefit risk assessment or benefit risk analysis. So I'm sure that you recognize this picture with this is a simplified picture with the main steps in the risk management process. You have the planning, the risk assessment itself, the risk control, the overall residual risk evaluation, the risk management review, and post-production activities. And then everything fits back into the loop again. So it's like a continuous process through the device lifetime. So where are we going? Where are we doing? We're supposed to do benefit risk analysis. Well, the first place is with the risk control stage, and the second one is within the overall residual risk evaluation. It's at these two steps that we are supposed to do that if you're looking at the standard. And let's have a little deeper look on what the standard actually requires. So at the risk control step, if we have unacceptable residual risks, so after risk control, we perform the risk control for the residual risk, and the residual risk is judged to be unacceptable. The standard says that the manufacturer may gather and review the literature to determine if the benefit of the intended use outweighs this residual risk. So this is clause 7.4. What about the overall residual risk? And the standard says, clause 8, that the manufacturer shall evaluate the overall residual risk by the medical device, taking into account the contributions of residual risk in relation to the benefit of the intended use. So you see, there are two pieces. These are the cases which require risk analysis. And keep in mind that the benefit risk analysis is used to determine if the residual risk is outweighed by the expected benefits of the intended use of the medical device. And this benefit risk analysis cannot be used to weigh residual risk against business advantages or economic advantages. So it's strictly comparison to the benefits of intended use. And this aspect has actually it's an increased focus within the medical device regulation. So I just wanted to say something more, but I will skip it for the next slides. We will focus on this presentation on the benefit risk analysis for the overall residual risk, since that's a little bit more complex. The principles are the same. If what are you doing for one single residual risk after risk control, or if you do it for the entire overall residual risk. So let's have a look into this. I will try to guide you. The overall residual risk evaluation, this is the clause in the standard, the latest version of the standard ISO 14971, which has undergone considerable change. The previous version of the standard provided a two-step approach in which first the residual risk was evaluated against the acceptability criteria, and if the overall residual risk was not judged acceptable, then the manufacturer could gather data and literature to determine if the benefits of using the medical device would outweigh the overall residual risk. This approach was, however, unclear from different aspects. First, it was unclear which criteria for risk acceptability should be used in this evaluation. Then the other aspect was, should the benefits of the intended use, should they be considered when doing the overall residual risk evaluation or not? And it was very, very clear. And it was also unclear which individual risks should be included in the evaluation of the overall residual risk. So the standard, the old version of the standard was quite unclear at that point. And this two-step approach was replaced with one evaluation in the latest version of the ISO 14971 standard. In this version, clause 8 now clearly specifies that the overall residual risk evaluation should always consider all contributions, all individual residual risk, regardless of the level, and that a benefit risk analysis for the overall residual risk is always part of the overall residual risk evaluation. So I hope that this is no news for you, that you already know this. Let me see. Something is not working here. My screen seems to be frozen. So this is what I already mentioned, that you should take into account all residual risk and that you always need to do a benefit risk analysis. So I hope that this is clear now, that you all have to do it. You do it together as part of the overall residual risk evaluation. The benefit risk analysis needs to be supported by objective evidence, and this was all touched also by the previous presenter, supported by objective evidence. And what kind of objective evidence? Well, you need to gather data, and I will go into this a little bit. Just bear with me some moments. We will get there in a couple next slides. It's both clinical study, but also technical data and post-market data. So it's some work that you have to do there, it needs to be based on judgment by experienced and knowledgeable individuals. So you would need to use a multidisciplinary team comprised by medical and clinical and application experts so it shouldn't be done only by development engineers. You need other kind of experiences as well. Unfortunately, there is no standardized approach on how to do this benefit risk analysis. What I see, what I experienced myself from contact with customers and other colleagues, that it's an area which is difficult and many manufacturers are struggling with. So from my experience, let me see, I found guidance for benefit risk analysis in 3 places. This is good for you to know. One of the places is, of course, the technical report, ISO TR 24971, the latest one, medical devices guidance on the application of ISO 14971. You will find there chapter 7.4, which provides some guidance in benefit risk analysis. More guidance is provided on the FDA, by the FDA. There are 2 guidances which can be used. One is called Factors to Consider when Making Benefit Risk Determinations in Medical Device Pre-Market Approval and De Novo Classifications. This is really good. And the second one is Considerations of Uncertainty in Making Benefit Risk Determination in Medical Device Pre-Market Approvals. If you look into these 3 guidances, you will get quite a lot of useful tips in how you could do good benefit risk analysis and how you should support it with data. I in the following slides, I put together a possible approach, which I will share with you. And this is the approach that I'm self-using when doing benefit risk analysis. It's an approach of 4 steps. The first step is to determine the benefits. This can be done quite early in medical device development, as Roger has explained in the previous presentation. The second step is to summarize all residual risks, and this you can do when we are approaching the when you did all risk control or risk assessment, risk control. You can summarize your residual risks, and then address uncertainties that you have, and finally create a narrative on risk and benefits supported by data. So I will guide you a little bit more into each steps. First, let's have a look at the benefit. How is benefit defined? And you will find the definition in ISO 149 in the risk measurement standard in clause 3.2. Benefit is defined as a positive impact or desirable outcome of the use of a medical device on the health of an individual, or a positive impact on patient management or public health. So what does it mean? This means that the benefits arising from medical device, it's related to the likelihood and extent of improvement of health expected from its use. So it's positive, what can be improved. And it can be described in terms of positive impact on clinical outcome, patient's quality of life, outcome related to diagnostic, a positive impact from diagnostic devices on the clinical outcomes. For example, if you have devices that are supporting the diagnostic, right? Impact on public health. So these are aspects which should be included in the benefits. And you should really look into that when you're, drafting, putting down on paper, documenting which benefits what are the benefits related to your medical device intended use. The nature and the nature and degree of benefits can depend also on the patient population. So that's where you have, if it's children or elderly or and so on. The next step. So we looked at the benefits, and we saw in the clauses of the standard that there was mentioned that the manufacturer should get a data and literature. So what kind of data are we talking about? Well, the evaluation should take into account knowledge of the intended medical indication, the generally knowledge state of the art in technology and medicine, and the availability of alternative medical devices or treatments. So you would need to gather that data, and you see it in this picture as state-of-the-art design and other treatment diagnostic options, for instance. The manufacturer can also compare the medical device under consideration to similar medical devices available on the market. So if you can get data related to similar devices, what's the intended use, what are the benefits, and so on, that it's an input, it's a data source. The key question when you gather data is whether the medical device under consideration has an acceptable overall residual risk in relation to the medical benefits in comparison to similar medical devices, right? That's why we are looking into similar medical devices. Residual risk posed by the medical device can be compared to corresponding risk for the similar medical devices if you take into account differences in intended use, right? So you have to keep that in place. Up-to-date information on intended use and adverse events of similar medical devices should be carefully reviewed, as well as information from scientific literature, including information about clinical experience. So as you see here, state-of-the-art I talked about, similar medical devices, other treatment options, other design solutions, and of course clinical studies with the device if you have any. And lots of the data will come also from the technical file of the device itself. So if you look at the risk data and the risk control measures and so on. And post-market data, adverse events, complaints, and so on. So these are data sources which you should look into and gather data which is relevant and can support your analysis. So just see where my so okay, something seems like so, and then we should look into also the benefits, right? Benefits can be estimated by knowledge from knowledge of several factors, such as the performance expected during clinical use, the clinical outcome expected from that performance, benefits result from the use of some medical device, factor relevant to the risk benefits of other diagnosis or treatment options. Sometimes benefits can be described in terms of magnitude of the positive effects. For example, how many patients that will experience the benefit, and what is the duration of the benefits, so on. So when you are when you are looking into the benefits, you should consider what type of benefits you have, what is the medical need, what's the magnitude of the benefits, what's the probability of experiencing one or more benefits, what's the duration of the effects, what is the patient perspective, and what is the healthcare personnel perspective. And of course, what is relevant, it depends, of course, on what device you have and what's the intended use, medical application, and so on. So these are aspects that you should look into, and when you are determining your benefits. And you should list all the benefits and also the considerations that you addressed, because you will use it in the next step of the analysis. And as with everything else, there is always some extent of uncertainty, and the sources of uncertainty when determining the benefits needs to be considered. And these uncertainties may be related to, for example, unclear correlation between non-clinical data, different tests that you've been doing in the verification, validation of the device phase, and modeling that you have done, and clinical performance. You can have some uncertainties that are coming from the study design or from the clinical investigation itself, on how many patients have been enrolled, what's the percentage of subjects that were lost to follow up, protocol deviation, how were the adverse events defined and documented, and follow-up duration, and so on. And also study outcome, how is the outcome of the study significant, insignificant, and so on. But also user experience. Does the user represent the real world user or not? So these are uncertainties related to the benefit. Then you should summarize the findings, and you can summarize the findings, for example, in a table. This is an example, a table that I'm using in my analysis, where you would list the benefits, and you should put your expected outcomes and note where you have, if you have evidence in preclinical data, report number, and place the report. So because this will be important to use when you are wrapping up the results, and also reference to evidence in clinical studies or in literature data, and make note of uncertainties if there are any. So this is a way of documenting the data, and in the next step, or later, you will should create a narrative, for each benefit. And here is an example. This is an example of a software medical device which is used for post-processing of medical resonance images. And this device is providing decision support for examination of soft tissues. And it's one of the benefits is that it's a short post-processing time as compared to the state of the art. The state of the art being manual calculations, where you note, you select the tissues that you want to look into it, and then you make some calculations. Outcomes for decision support would be the image quality. It's improving the image quality, and then you can measure that by accuracy of the image, and also repeatability is the measurement repeatability. possible to repeat. And for the short processing time, of course, the processing time itself, how long time does it take to make these calculations. Then in the column with the evidence in preclinical pre-market data, you would need to put references to test reports with supporting data for both benefits, and or do the same with literature clinical studies. So this is a way of doing it. And you would do the same exercise for risks, for residual risk. You would consider risks. And an important part in the acceptability of a residual risk is whether an anticipated benefit can be achieved through the use of an alternative design solution or therapeutic option that eliminate that risk or reduces the overall residual risk. So you will need to have a look into that. And therefore, you should take into consideration the following factors. One is the type of harms or risks, and what are the severity of the risk? What's the probability of experiencing one or more harms or risks? What's the duration of the harmful event? Is it something that how long does it last? What's the patient perspective or tolerance to this harm, and what's the healthcare professional perspective? Also consider false positive or false negative results if it's a device which is supporting your diagnosis. So these are considerations that you should make. And if you make any assumption, just make them clear to everyone in the team so everyone is aware of that. And you should list or risk. And a way of doing it's to organize your risks. So there you will need to do some work within your risk management first. So don't take, if you have a risk assessment with 200 risks, and so don't make this on an individual line level. You should organize your risk, and you should consider which risks are, in terms of which are the risks that are leading to the same harm, and try to consider all the individual contributions, and that's a good way of doing it, to organize them on harms. If it's not feasible for you to do that, it depends on how you define your harms. Of course, you could do that on hazardous situation as well. So to reduce it to 2 handful or so, so it's so you can handle it. You should address uncertainties within the residual risk. Are there any sources of uncertainties that affect your assessment of the risks? And put them also down, make notes of them so you're aware of them, and you make this analysis in a good way. So what kind of uncertainties you can have from the risk assessment itself? Have you estimated the risk? They are related also to the product performance characteristics, and it's the design itself, lack of data on repeated procedure. For example, if you need to repeat the procedure, medical procedure where you use the device, you need data on then. What happens then? Do you need to do subsequent tests or treatments when you are using this medical device for a medical application? Then, of course, you would have uncertainties that are coming from the clinical studies itself, from the user experience, and post-production data. So you would need to look into this aspect. And then you should summarize the findings, and you do it in a similar way as for the benefits. You should list your residual risk. You could, as you group them, of course. And then you should document what is the expected outcome. And then, of course, evidence, references to evidence in the literature, clinical studies, as well as in post-production data, and make note of the uncertainties. So you will use this later on to do a narrative for each harm or residual risk. So if you look into the clinical effect, so you should make a narrative for each of them. How could such a table look like? For example, in this case, for the same software device, one of the main harms or risk is the risk of post-processing errors, which may lead to misdiagnosis. Expected outcome for this risk would be that the risk should be comparable to manual post-processing, because that's what we compare to, that's the state of the art. And then you should have reference to articles or clinical studies, and also evidence in post-production data, where you would look into the complaint rate, number of adverse events. Misdiagnosis due to image artifacts, you would do the same, and you see, if we put the expected outcome there, that the artifact should be easy to distinguish, not affect diagnostic utility, it's easier the analysis will be easier. You know what you should look into that. And the third example is delayed diagnosis, so due to device unavailability. And then you go back to manual post-processing again. So this is a way of doing the analysis. And then when you are done with this, you should summarize. Here I put it in this picture as medical benefit 1, 2, 3, and then the overall risk organized in this 1, 2, and so on. And you should you create a narrative for each benefit and for each residual risk, and then you make a conclusion on that, right? To see, is the benefit, does the benefit outweigh the residual risk? And for products on the European market, according to the medical device regulations, you need to align this benefit risk analysis with the clinical evaluation or the performance evaluation, depending if it's for MDR clinical evaluation, and for IVDR it's performance evaluation. And the benefit risk analysis should be confirmed by the clinical evaluation. So you see, it's synergy here for Europe, which means that the development team would work close with the clinical evaluation team, because parts of this benefit risk analysis is actually done within the clinical evaluation, the literature search, the search for clinical study, and so on. So it's really a teamwork. You would need to have synergies there, work together. The clinical evaluators will gather available literature and data, will review the available literature and data, will create a narrative of the benefits and risk, and will do the evaluation of the benefit risk balance, while the risk management team or the development team will summarize all residual risk and harms, clinical effects, will consider the contributions of all residual risk, and by considering the contribution of all risk, I mean all risk from design, use, manufacturing, transport, storage. So all contributions should be considered. And we'll also determine if the risk has been reduced as far as, possible, considering the state-of-the-art techniques and processes. So that's something that the risk management team can do. And of course, determination of the expected benefits from the intended use, that is done quite early in the development process, as Roger mentioned. So this is a way of working with the benefit risk. I will give you an example on how narratives for the benefits could look like. and it's for the same device. And this is well, it's an example that I fixed for this presentation with experience from real life. Compared to the state-of-the-art conventional MRI, the clinical data shows that the device provides process images of comparable quality and diagnostic utility for examination of soft tissue. This could be a narrative for one of the benefits of post-processing images. So they are not showing the diagnostics utility. This is just a part of it, of course. You will need to write a little bit more. Another narrative example is the clinical data show that the post-processing time is significantly shorter than in manual post-processing, done within a few minutes, and thus enables image analysis in clinically acceptable time, and with references to where this evidence is coming from. So this is an example of narratives. In the technical report, you would have also another example where which is more elaborate, and it's addressing burns that can occur when you use a electrode of high frequency surgery device. In this case, the benefit of using the high frequency surgery device as compared to other surgical techniques has been determined to be to outweigh the residual risk of burns. So this is a way how you can write it. And please have a look into the guidance if you have time, because there are some more examples there. I can't take all examples here. I have 2 more pictures. Common pitfalls. What I've seen in my experience with contact with both customers and notified bodies is that one common mistake is that a benefit risk analysis is only done for unacceptable or so-called LARP residual risks. And this is no longer acceptable. If you both in the standard and the medical device regulation, you would need to do a benefit risk analysis for the overall residual risk, taking into consideration all contributions. Another mistake is that risk from manufacturing process are often not included, more often than well, it's seldom they're included, really. So you will need to benefits from the intended use are not provided in many benefit risk analysis. I just see a statement. They say the benefits from the intended use outweigh the residual risk, and I say, but what are the benefits? They are not provided. They are not listed anywhere. So that's a common mistake. The benefit risk analysis often consists only of a statement that the benefits are outweigh the residual risk, but it's again not supported by any evidence. There is no narrative, no explanation, so it's only a statement. Not based on objective evidence. Yeah, no reference is provided, no evidence is provided for the benefits, for the benefit risk analysis. And for Europe, the benefit risk analysis is not aligned with and confirmed by the clinical evaluation or performance evaluation. So this is what I'm seeing from customers and from contact with the notified bodies. So what are the takeaways from this presentation? Well, it's the challenge with 2 screens. The takeaways are, you should always do a benefit risk analysis for the overall residual risk. You should take into account all residual risk. You should summarize all residual risk, organize them So you can summarize them and do the analysis in a good way. The terminal benefits, so provide the benefits, and create narratives on benefits and risk. And last but not least, use clinical and post-market data, right? So to support your analysis. So thank you for listening. This is all that I had to present. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
All right, so we have some interesting questions here in the chat. One concerns looking into incidents of reports of similar devices. That is something that I also know that I've seen. And the person who asks here says that I find it hard to put in a context since I don't know how many devices are on the market. So we only see what goes bad, but we have no way to know like what is the overall population of devices in the market. And as she claims here, over a 5-year period, you have one serious incident, one person died. That's bad if there is few devices, but if there are millions of devices, that puts the whole thing in a different perspective. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, and this is it's a very good question because it's the drawback that we don't know so much from the competitor products. Sometimes we have you can get some data on that to see how many devices are in a but more often probably not. What this is it can give you an indication on the type of problems that other competitor devices are having in the field. One database where you can go and look into, it's the FDA mode. When UDAMED will be released, finally made available into Europe, I hope that we will have a better source of data for such incidents and more transparency. But yeah, it's I would say that I use it as today as I don't have that much. If I don't have any knowledge of the number of devices on the market, I would use that as an indication of what kind of problems similar device have without putting any numbers. It's just an indication. Do they have the same issues or do they have other issues? So that's how I would use it.
Yeah, and this is one of many sources. You point out many times here the importance of data and collecting data. And what I was wondering, are there any particular sources of data for benefit or for risk that you see in your experience is consistently underused, or you would recommend manufacturers that you might not even know that you have this data, but you should really take a look into that because that can help you?
Well, one of the data sources is to look into the your support from your bench tests, for instance. As I said, as I presented previously, you have well, let me put it this way. I mentioned that you would need to write some kind of recommend working outcome, expected outcome, and this is something that you would have to do due to the MDR. The MDR, according to the MDR, you would not only list what are the benefits, but also the expected outcome, and the expected outcome. Maybe it is linked to the performance of the device. So you may have some supporting data there from your own technical file. And that is something that it's sometimes missed, I would say.
Yeah.
But to be frank, I've seen very few good risk-benefit analysis. Most of them look like benefit outweighs the residual risk, and it's nothing more of it. But, yeah, that's one.
Well, it sounds like there's a great learning potential here.
Yes.
Alexander here is asking another question, and this is more of a like what goes where in terms of documentation. So he says, so if I understand correctly, you would put the benefit risk narrative into the risk management report. How would you differentiate that from similar content that would need to be put in the clinical evaluation report. Wouldn't that be the right frame for the top level benefit risk discussion?
Yeah, I would say that that's a very good point. You need to have a synergy here. So I would work. This is my view on things. So it can be done in different things, but in the risk management file, I wouldn't put the entire benefit risk analysis in the risk management file. I would keep it probably in the clinical evaluation report, and because that's where you do the entire analysis. But in the risk management report, I would put this conclusion and reference to the clinical evaluation.
That's a very
this is one way of doing it.
Yeah, very clear-cut answer. Thank you very much.
Because the risk management report is the last document that you would do for your device before put it released to the market. So I would work with that way.
Okay,
but of course there are other ways as well.
Yeah, remember that, everybody. The risk management report is the last document. The evening before the submission, that's the last document you'll touch. All right, thank you, Cristina, representing QAdvis here in the Sharpen Your Skills seminar hosted by Aligned and Health Tech Cluster. That was an excellent speech, and it reflects really the pragmatic and best practices I often heard from QAdvis. I know that you have a number of events coming up, and I urge everyone to look into those, because many of the QAdvis co-workers are actual authors of the standards that you use every day in your medical device development and documentation. So that is an excellent source for first-class knowledge on how to deal with those standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me.